but there's something off, and it's this instinctual level where if you cross a line, and they have to have the perception of control. It's very important to them that others view them as the boss and in control. And if they feel slighted or disrespected publicly in that line, the moment you tiptoe across that line, they will explode in a way that's whiplash.
You're listening to the Great Reassessment Podcast.
Warren Smith, it's good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation because, you and I have been going back and forth over the last couple of weeks, just as, since my story has sort of gained traction and things like that. And so we've really only got to talk just sort of in that vein. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your story, though, and how, just how you came into teaching and getting to know you a bit more. So first off, man, I just want to know, what got you into teaching?
I kind of fell into it. My plan going into graduate school, 'cause my background was in filmmaking, and then I went to undergrad UNC School of the Arts, did LA for a little while, worked as an assistant to a talent agent, freelance for a bit, and I realized, the ultimate field, I think, for what I'm doing, or job for what I'm doing in this field, would be to teach at the college level for filmmaking. It's one of the gives more security, and both of my parents were professors, so I saw that, and they always said that was the best job you could have, is some form of teaching. You get summers off and all that. So that was my original goal, and I do teach one course or sometimes two a semester at Emerson still, but the tenure track thing has kind of become, the landscape has shifted. It seemed like right out of graduate school, I had to figure something out. And so I ended up teaching at a public high school, until COVID hit and everything shut down. And then I wound up at a special ed school, and that's where I was until last year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm so happy, so the way you and I got connected was because I reached out after I saw you did a video on one of the articles that was written about me, but I actually didn't follow you before this. And a friend that I have, he's from South Africa, and he's been following your channel for a while now, and he sent it to me. And it's interesting how similar our stories are, and just how we exited the public school system. We both lost our jobs for, I think, helping students think critically. And I started going down the rabbit hole in your content and learning about what sort of launched you in the first place. And it was this video of you helping a student think critically regarding J.K. Rowling and some of the things she said. And so I thought that was brilliant. But I want to know, what kind of relationships did you cultivate with students to where this student sort of saw you as a teacher he could come to regarding this, and you can help him think through a worldview situation?
Yeah, I mean, some teachers resonate different with the students, and you get to know them in that environment. And we were doing a newscast that day, and so that was kind of a warm-up, where I was like, let's just do a practice 5-minute chat, and I'll sit in the chair or whatever. And it was really low production value, because it was kind of just an offhand project that was requested of us. I don't know exactly. I mean, for me, I would always just try and lead by example and be honest with the students as much as you can. And I would admit that there's sometimes some things I won't be able to talk about, but I won't say anything that I know to be untrue, to the best of my ability. And that was kind of my philosophy towards it. But I think students can really sniff out nonsense and bullshit. And yeah, it's kind of like a performance art in a way, being a teacher, I'm sure you've encountered that, where you learn how to kind of be engaging, or to get them interested. So I really don't know beyond that, though. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe something just with your persona and your personality. They saw you as somebody that would give them the truth.
Try to, yeah. Yeah. And people have since described me as laid back. I've never thought of myself as like that, but you lose you're so subjective, you lose objectivity. So I don't know how people perceive me, or I never would have thought that that interaction would be that interesting. So
Mm.
it was interesting to see the response.
When you were coming up through school, do you have any teachers that made a lasting impact on you?
In undergrad, I did. In high school, sort of in high school, but in film school, I did. I had the founder of the shooting gallery, a production company in the 90s. There was an independent movie movement, filmmaking movement in New York, and this company, the shooting gallery, exploded and produced movies like Sling Blade. And he was one of the founders, Bob Goss, and he became kind of my mentor. He was my producing professor. And so, yeah, he stands out. And some other teachers like Lauren Vilchik. Yeah, I would say I had not in graduate school, really. No, but undergrad.
Yeah, the other teachers that worked at taught alongside you, do you know how they received the news of you being let go and getting fired? You know, what was that
The
like?
only So in the wake of the video going viral, there was kind of mixed reactions. Some people were like, "How are you not fired already?" Because it took a few months. But there was one teacher I was close with, the music teacher, and we had been making YouTube videos together, and we continued after that. We were like, "Oh, here's an opportunity. Let's run with it." And he was always off camera, but he would come over on Fridays and we would put out a video every Friday. But once you get fired, there's like no connection anymore. In my world, there was no communication. He messaged me once, like the day after I got fired. He's like, "Oh, I just heard. Are you okay?" Blah blah blah. And then one more time, he was like, "Hey, can I come pick up the equipment?" Like a week later. It was just very bizarre. But I can understand in his mind where he doesn't want anything. He has a family, a kid to provide for, and they could fire you at any time. At my school, it was like not like just a regular public school. There was a special clause we signed where it says you could be fired for they don't even need a reason. So, yeah, he was completely scared out of it.
Yeah. That sort of is similar to my situation. Prior to like when all of this was first, it was boiling, right? And something was about to happen. I had a lot of support, and just behind closed doors there was a lot of support. And now that after the decision was made final, I haven't received maybe one text message, one well wish, and I think it's because a, there's a sense that you might have like lose some job security if you get yourself tangled up with the guy who just got fired for telling the truth, right? Like for some reason, the public schools and schools in general are really good at keeping everybody in line and really disincentivizing somebody from expressing how they truly feel about something.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pay in my world, the pay was low, very low. So you're often dealing, in my case, I was often dealing with people that it's a mixed bag, but
Yeah,
it's not like they have a lot of, I don't know, you're not dealing with the highest caliber often of ambition or
yeah,
exceptionalism. I don't want to sound like that, but it's easier for them to they're very used to their routine and their normal. They've probably been there years, and yeah, I met with Jordan Peterson, and he was describing this concept of the zebras, how the camouflage, like zebras have stripes for camouflage, but it's like, well, how is that camouflage? It's black and white. It doesn't blend in with anything, but
hmm,
it blends in with the other zebras, which makes it harder for you to get taken down if you blend in with the herd. If your color changed suddenly as a zebra, you would stand out, and the lions would go for you because the lions can coordinate, or the predator can coordinate, and it takes coordination to be able to take one down. They can't coordinate if they can't single anything out. So it's a
hmm.
safety mechanism for all the zebras. I think there's some of that psychology in play.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. I didn't know you met with Jordan Peterson. I saw your Joe Rogan interview and I watched that and I thought that was so cool. And I liked your video on it as well, like describing what the experience was like. Did you meet with Jordan Peterson before or after going on Joe
That was
Rogan?
before, like 2 months before that, and it was in New York. But yeah, if you're interested in the deep dive into what happened at the school, we talked about it for like 2 hours. So it really goes into all of that. I didn't really get too much into that with Joe. I wish I probably had because most people watching that, my episode with Joe, like have never heard of me. So I didn't really provide probably enough background. Like, what do you think? Was it too confusing? Or how do you think it went?
Well, because I had really studied you before that, and so I came in with a lot of background knowledge, but I thought it was really cool. You seemed really um just it seemed like a really good dialogue and that you were comfortable, and I don't know. I think most people might get really nervous, but it seemed like you did a really good job just communicating, and that might just be your natural ability. Like you're a really good communicator, but um, yeah, I thought it was really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because I have no idea because of that subjectivity. I don't see it the way it actually is. I have no idea. You know.
Yeah. What books or what learning has most influenced the way that you see the world, and why? I'll leave it at that. I won't ask a follow-up question.
Yes, we were just talking about Jordan Peterson. That was a big one. 2016, 2017 probably is when that, yeah, that would be because I was in graduate school encountering a lot of the same things. So I remember that distinctly. As far as other books, World War II, I think has had a big impact on me because my grandfather was in the Air Force, and it it's just a fascinating time. I think there's so much you can learn about critical thinking and human nature. And then David McCullough, 1776, the American Revolution. I think those two conflicts, if you study those two conflicts, you can get a real window into the human soul and human nature. And you can learn, like, if you were going to teach students about leadership or something, I think that would be the 1776 would be the ultimate place to go. It's unreal. Like if you made that into a movie and it wasn't history, no one would believe it probably because it's just so crazy the story.
Yeah, I was sad when I found out he passed away. Was it last year? And I have not finished the book. I have the book. I've got like 50, 60 pages deep. I've read a lot of other books on, the American founding and the war for independence. What um what about the American Revolution, or the American War for Independence rather, do you think reveals about humanity or
The
man's
framework that they
yeah.
created around they were trying to create something brand new. Suddenly they had this incredible opportunity to start from scratch. So they were trying to create a system of government that would best reflect the nature of reality. And that's why they describe it as these truths are natural, sacred, and self evident. That was the idea, is that almost like the logic is the evidence, that there's no need for epistemology beyond like this is, and I think that is the accurate level of analysis of as the in at the individual, because no two people are the exact same, no two conflicts are the exact same, and we do have a tendency to generalize and think about comparing wars. It happens often, but it's life is more complicated. But I think at the individual level, they recognize the importance of the pursuit of autonomy, which I think is what liberty is all about. Because what is freedom in its purest form? It's complete. If you could have it, it would be complete and utter self sufficiency. That would be ultimate freedom. Then you're free. That's the most free logically you could be. So I think that liberty is all about the pursuit of that autonomy. Some people don't think about it like that or even realize that's what they're doing. But, and I think that's the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea that everyone is created, comes into the world with the same potential, even if it's not even, yes, we're going to be better at some things or whatnot, but by like the laws of nature and physics, you are not restricted by the laws of man beyond anyone else. Is the idea. It was just a very revolutionary idea that seems so we take for granted now. And the other, I would look toward to Washington around leadership, the fact that he wasn't a brilliant strategist. He's education. He went to school until he was 14, and he had the equivalent of a sixth grade education in today's standards, is how David McCullough estimates it. His strengths came from fortitude and his ethical framework. Like that was it, really. I mean, and he made a lot of mistakes, but so and it was just amazing how everyone universally they were like, "Yeah, this is the guy who needs to do it," and he literally led through that entire war. And it was like, how long was it? 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get paid anything. And I just realized, like at the River Delaware, the thing that fascinated me about Churchill, I was trying to describe to Joe Rogan about how he was like going down fighting that idea. That's essentially what Washington did at the crossing of the Delaware. They thought the war was over at that point. Everyone around him thought it was over. So they were like, well, if it's over, we might as well attack. And that's what they did. And it worked. And suddenly they won. So they had their own form of Dunkirk, where had the wind been blowing on the other side of the river, this was up in Brooklyn in New York, if the fog had been moving differently, the war would have been over. Literally, it's just crazy. Like it makes
Yeah.
you wonder about things like that do indicate to a larger design where it's just how could this coincidence occur? It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what I've gotten out of studying that time period is courage, and real courage is contagious. And we need people to be courageous. Like if you would not have that if you didn't have the courage that some of these guys had. And you're right, like they were trying to start something completely brand new. And at the center of all that was this idea that, real freedom can be maintained by um, a representative government of the people by the people. But I read that time period and I'm just awestruck by the courage that some of these men had. And like you said, they were not prodigies. They were largely self-taught, and so they were largely self-educated.
Hmm.
You can look at Washington, Hamilton,
Yeah.
Jefferson, and
And
a
I
lot
think
of these men,
Jefferson
like,
was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence.
yeah. And so education, courage, bravery to speak the truth, like those are all values that, do you think those are being lost today?
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, we've lost the so in education back then, so Washington did not have that education, but John Adams, Jefferson did, and they learned to read Latin so that they could read the classic works. And in those classic works emphasized those ideals we were talking about, duty, honor, and things that people kind of laugh at today. But there was a real sense of how history views everyone. And there was something that they took very serious. And this was in a time when how could you even know how history would be recorded? It seems
Hmm.
like in an age of social media, you would be even more conscious of that because it seems like everything can be recorded. Back then, I mean, think about how difficult it was to print something. It's like, but yet they were still living as though it mattered. And that's where the idea of a higher power came in as well. I, it's not just about history, but it's beyond just the history of man. So, but yeah, I've been encountering this a lot where like I was just in a podcast the other day at the whatever podcast, and they were laughing at the idea of the host was laughing at the idea of encouraging men to take responsibility, try and fix the problems they encounter, and to step up during times of war. He claims that conservatives are similar to feminists because they echo those ideas. And I was like, wait, so what do we do if we're invaded tomorrow by Russia? Like, you don't want men to step up? And he couldn't answer that at all. And his response, essentially, after just trying to evade, was, well, and then I used examples from World War II, and his response was, well, World War II was exaggerated largely. Um, the Russians could have just won without us. So it was essentially all just a waste, is what he's insinuating. And I just think we're there, and there's a lot of people out there that echo that. So it's
Mm,
very strange. So I would encourage people to stand against that kind of nonsense for sure.
yeah. I think we're just living in a time where we are deprived of courage. And, when I look at your story, it takes courage to speak the truth, especially when the stakes are high. You don't know what's on the other side of a moment where you're called to speak the truth and you could face
Well,
real
it's what I
consequences.
think is the truth. I don't know what's true any more than anyone else, but it's what you say what you think is true. You do what you think is logical. At that point, I think it was more so just about liability for them. Maybe I'm sure there was concern from some people about like they disagreed with what I was saying in some of these videos and things, but I think it was just more so it was just easier for them just to get rid of me and they just needed a way to do it. So then you enter the unknown and it's scary and you're in that point now. And I just remember this overwhelming feeling of just wanting to be out of it and to never have to think about it again. And so like with Joe Rogan, that's one of the reasons I think I could have done better in that podcast is because I had distanced myself. There had been enough time to where I wasn't feeling that anymore. So I'm not sure if that even came across. Like I didn't, but it freed me up to talk about a lot of other things but the one with Peterson was very cathartic because that was like really the last time I processed all that. And then I was just like, I don't need to think about them again. Like you don't want to let them live in your head. It's just like, don't give them the energy. It's true for a lot of things, a lot of people out there. It's the best solution. But yeah, being in that unknown, man, but that's also where the reward lies. There are so many people that are, rightfully so, are terrified of the unknown. I'll give you an example. That teacher I was talking about, the music teacher, in the wake of the virality and all that, you get interesting offers and people proposing. Most of it's nonsense. Someone was like, "Hey, so I got a call from some guy in Hollywood. He's like, I'm just curious if we were to hand you like $400,000 to make a movie, would you have an idea? Would you be able to come up with an idea?" And I thought about it. I was just thinking, like first of all, this guy's not going to go through it. He probably just wants me to give him an idea or something. But I was talking to the music teacher about, I was like, what would you do if you were in this position and like someone offered you that? Like, what would, like, genuinely, because he's like, I just wouldn't, I probably wouldn't even try it. I wouldn't do it. I was like, see, even if it's a 1 in 1,000 shot, you wouldn't try and come up with anything? They're handing you this money to try. It's like he's like, well, I'm not a filmmaker. Even though we talk often about filmmakers, like no one's a filmmaker. What can this movie director who like do that you can't do? It's all in your mind. It's like, like that, and that took me aback. It's that spirit though that's what most people are like. Like they just would rather. It's easier not to.
Do you think that mentality comes from, do you think that's learned in America, the way we school ourselves? And I don't want to
Partially,
say
I think.
educate ourselves. I want to say we've been well schooled to just fall in line, to follow a script, to comply. And
That's an
so,
element of it. Yeah, the social construct element, but there's also just it's almost like physics. Water trickling down a brook is going to take the path of least resistance. Most people are going to do what's easier in any given moment. They're going to take the path of least resistance, and it's easier to be foolish than wise. It's easier not to be in the unknown. It's a lot easier for me to when I was going into work every day, collecting that little check. But the reason that's little and the reason people like to do that is I know exactly what I have to do that day, and then I get to go home and not think about it. Right now, it's like it's all on me. The rewards are way higher, but I have to come up with it's all on me. And I have to come up with something every day, and it doesn't stop. The clock doesn't stop. It's two different modalities, but and it's a trade-off, but I can tell you that, and that I think that is why most people, like, there's a lot of people, honestly, that I don't think, like, if I were that music teacher, if I were to say, hey, we can switch spots right now, would you do it? I don't think he would do it, honestly. Even though he's struggling financially and working a whole nother job teaching music outside of school, I think he would keep doing it. Even though he pretended like he wants to, and I think he even thought he wanted to. That's why he was doing the YouTube videos with me. And but uh,
When you
anyways,
were teaching, did you feel out of place? Did you ever have like this
yeah,
sensation that there was something else out there for you?
yeah. I was constantly trying to. First of all, that I mean, if I get a paycheck for $1,400 every 2 weeks, which is what I was getting, you got to do something else. So I was working on a feature film. Which became the name, the Secret Scholar Society. And through that process, something ended up sprouting out completely different. But if it wasn't working on that movie, I'd have been working on another movie. I have always multiple things going that long term, like crazy ideas or whatnot. But you're always throwing these Hail Marys to figure something out. That to me, that was how I justified it. It's like I take this little paycheck because it's so clear. It's easy what I'm doing essentially. It allows me. School was out at. I was in the car usually by 2:30 on my way home. So it allows you the schedule. If so, what are you using that window for? It's essentially you'd be a fool. You have that schedule so you can pursue other things. Now, when something else does take off, don't be surprised when the school is like upset about it or whatnot. So I'm just like, but at that time when I did leave the school, I had no financial security. So that
Yeah.
was scary. But yeah, I felt out of place all the time because I was surrounded by people that like this was it. They didn't want to go anywhere. People had been there for years. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely felt out of place. But me and that music teacher connected because we shared similar interests and we liked working on projects outside of school and doing all these things that
Yeah, I think being in a school, it and I know there's a lot of really creative new methods out there. Like I toured a classical Christian academy, and their mentality is, they're going back to like the way people used to be classically trained, and I actually really appreciate what they're trying to do, but they the way the reason they're able to succeed is because they have a real community. They have families who partner with the school, who are on the same page. And so like these kids aren't living two different lives. They're living one way at home, and when they step into school, it's not a complete change. And I think that's one of the hardest things about public schools today is that we're living in one world outside of these walls, and then when we go into the school, like there's a war being waged in students' minds. They're living like in one like image based, social media based, television based, and then they're stepping into a world that is very text based and reading, and it's very hard to do that and to so I've been reading a lot about this, and I don't know if you know who Neil Postman is. He's an author. He passed away in the 90s, but he wrote about education. And one thing he talks about is like just what I just described, like students are being conditioned in this new technological social media driven world, and then they're going into a school where they have to sit, and all creativity is sort of stifled, and it's just not the world we're living in anymore. And man, I'm losing my train of thought. Um,
I think we see the world through stories.
yeah,
I think that's kind of what you're getting at with. So let's say we were talking about World War II, and I wanted to communicate leadership, or we're studying leadership, or Winston Churchill even. Let's just say you're trying to learn about a specific event, Dunkirk, let's say. I think it would be very valuable to actually watch the movie, even though it's fictional, because we see the world through stories. And maybe this is because of my background in filmmaking, but stories can often communicate truth in a different way, or the truth of the think about like Saving Private Ryan, that opening scene. What is going to communicate the truth of D-Day more, like a Ken Burns style documentary of D-Day, or that scene in Saving Private Ryan? It's one is fiction, one is more rooted in cold fact, but so for me, I think that's what you were getting at. It's like trying to bridge that, to bounce between the two, because students don't read much anymore. Not the students I was dealing with. Is
Yeah,
that
the
kind of what you're?
medium. There's a quote he used in the book. It's like the medium is the message.
Oh, Marshall McLuhan?
Yeah, Marshall McLuhan. He's quoting Marshall McLuhan
Uh,
in this book I'm reading, but it's like the medium for which like we're trying to communicate knowledge and impart knowledge. It just it doesn't work in this type of system anymore. And I think you're right. Like students need to be captivated by something, and one of the best ways to do that is through a story.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure. Like if so, I mean, if I was teaching Great Gatsby, I would have them watch the movie and try and get them to then get invested in the book. And you can use that as a conduit. And but the attention
um,
spans are just really short now. It's
yeah, you look at the part of the thing that I'm noticing is that we are being conditioned by this new medium, which is social media, and this insatiable desire to be connected. And it's hard to use that responsibly. And so when all you have is social media, everything you look at in the world is a post. And so there's really no stillness and real presence in moments. It's like you're somewhere, you you see this as a perfect opportunity to take a picture or record something and post it. Everything is a post. And that's part of what got me in trouble is like I was going to read from To Kill a Mockingbird, and that was the perfect moment for somebody to it was a perfect post. And it's like this is the medium which is shaping our consciousness now. And so, and I don't know if we're just not completely transitioned into a world where students are rewarded and can succeed. Because right now, students fail not because they're stupid, but because like the medium through which they're being conditioned to look at the world and interact with it hasn't completely tipped over yet. And so I'll give an example. Like um, in one of Plato's writings, that I think it's the Judgment of Thoth, he's visited by a god who says he invented writing. And Thamus says, why do you want to teach people how to write? Because then they're going to abandon memory. They're not going to draw from deep wells of memory. They're going to be able to write everything down. And, you know, there was a time when people who succeeded in education were those who didn't write, but they were those who transmitted education like orally and had deep wells of knowledge in their minds. And if you were on the other side of that, like you wouldn't be regarded as a sage or somebody who's really wise, right? Because then it's authors who write things down. And now we're transitioning into image-based media where people are considered wise based on what they say on camera, what they post. And so go one more, it's we're in schools, it's still that old medium, and kids are being conditioned to like they're not interacting with it in the same way that like people did 50 years ago. So maybe in 50 years we'll think they're brilliant, but it's just because we haven't turned a corner in that. Like, did you see what you picking up what I'm laying
yeah,
down here?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I struggle with that because I'm trying to write. I'm trying to write a book. I have to write a book. I just signed a deal to write a book. And I'm like, oh man, I got to write a book. But I've been working on it for a while. But there is, Jordan Peterson was talking about this where it does. So if you want to if you want to really learn how to articulate yourself and how to speak, to learn how to think, spend time writing because they're the same thing. And when you're writing, it allows you to map out your thinking in another way that mentally you have for me at least, I have a rougher idea, but like I know what I'm trying to say, but then when you go sentence by sentence, it allows you to deploy logic in a way where you can kind of slow down a little bit more and actually, and then revise sentence. And then it really helps if you have the mental concept of what you're trying to say. Like, let's say you were going to prepare for a debate or something. If you were to sit down and if you had, but most of the people don't have to do it. So they don't, who's going to sit down and write out an essay? You know what I mean? But if you were to do that, I think in that mental process, you're going to come out of that in phase three. Like first phase is you have the idea, second sitting down, and then you're ready for that debate in another way, or
Mhm.
it's ingrained in. So that's where I'm constantly bouncing between the two. I spent a lot of time screenwriting in my life, and I've written a couple of short films and a feature film and produced those, but I don't know if that's different.
No, yeah, I think writing things down is a great start because I think real knowledge, real wisdom is acquired through communication, not through not through just reading a book one time.
Mm.
You'll be able to recollect facts, but real knowledge comes through when it actually helps you live differently. And I think writing it down, like you're communicating to yourself.
I think it goes to the idea of how to think versus what to think, and there's a lot of people in this online space that are very good at out informationing the other person. That's less interesting to me than versus how do people wield the information. And that this goes right to teaching, where a lot of people believe that teaching is, and it is important to, there's essential information, like we were talking about the American Revolution, like that's all information but what do you do with that information? What's we kind of talked about that, the deeper lessons of how honor has changed. Like those are conversations about how to think, not what to think. And I think this applies to absolutely to critical thinking. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people that are very, and especially in this internet age, it's just the information is non-ending and it's all at your fingertips now. And Wikipedia, it's just, so if you kind of can separate the two and really trace your thinking to the root level, if you are interested in like debating or whatnot, or being able to articulate yourself, those are the people that can really do it. Is they can explain where each layer comes from all the way down to the root layer, like we were talking about the founding fathers and this model, and we traced it all the way down to a reflection of what is like the fabric of reality. So these things are self-evident. That's what they were doing when they wrote that, because
Mhm.
they knew they had to explain, they had to account for it. And most people don't think like that. They don't think about, okay, where do your ethics come from? Really, it's
Yeah, I think you have to, at this point, because everything on the internet is so widely available, it's easier to listen to a podcast than it is to write something down and read a whole book. It's easier to do all that. So I think if people want to really acquire true knowledge, you have to, at this point, be very deliberate in, like you said, separating your interaction with those two in those two realms. If you want to increase your ability to concentrate, improve your memory, improve your ability to speak and ability to think, I really think you have to. Whereas before, it may have been a little bit more natural, it was ingrained into the society and the culture a little bit more. But today, I think you have to take time to sheer force of will yourself to take a break, sit and really dedicate time to reflection and being still, whipping out a journal and writing something down. And you can still use the technology. Like maybe you ask ChatGPT saying, what is a 15, 20-minute thought exercise I can do completely, on my own at a desk? And what are some questions I can ask myself to not just memorize a fact, but then to like let it go a couple layers deep to actually weave its way into like becoming the substance of your thoughts.
Yeah.
So you can actually live out an improved ethic or an improved virtue and apply wisdom when you're confronted with a difficult circumstance. And I just think we have to be a lot more deliberate about it today. Podcasts are amazing. They really are. But I get the sensation that podcasters and people who just talk without taking, like, it can give the appearance of wisdom just because somebody was really early, right? Like somebody who was really early into podcasting might have 2 million subscribers and they talk, but it's does that person really actually have wisdom, or does it just look like they
Well,
do?
is that what you think makes most podcasters successful? Is it their wisdom, or is it like you said, they got there early, they have the model, and they're talking to people that maybe are eccentric, are famous, and then people that have the wisdom. Like it's going to be a variety of people. Like is Joe? I guess Joe Rogan's wise. I mean, he's smart. He's
No, and I think you can't put everybody into the same one, Um, I think there are some who appear to be wise, and really, if you caught them in a one-on-one conversation off camera, you'd see a completely different side of this person, like the way they live their lives, he or she lives his life. It would be completely, it would just be two different people. And,
hmm
but I get the sensation that Joe Rogan is actually, he's acquired a lot of wisdom from, some of the really, really wise people, and from people who I've talked to who have seen him out in public, like he's still just a very genuine person. So I've heard. And um, so it communicates that you're living out like the same type of wisdom and ethics that you talk about on your show, and you're actually living those out in the real.
Yeah, I think he's authentic.
Mhm.
And I think if you're interested in this space, like in continuing your platform and everything, I think that's the key is to be authentic and keep going. Those are the two. Where was I hearing that the other day? And I'm noticing that pattern. It echoes across. I heard it somewhere else. I thought it was in David McCullough reading 1776. In a way, it was like differently worded to echo back to those flood. But anyways, but that is the best advice. Like,
Yeah, I think. Well, thank you. I mean, I think what I want to maintain is like whether whether or not I end up having any success here is it's I don't know, but not giving up those touch points with reality. I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. I think what keeps somebody grounded is having touch points with reality that reminds you you're still a human being and you're not necessarily more valuable than other people, you know, and I kind of got a taste of you know, a lot of people invited me to be on their podcast and to speak with them. And, it's very flattering to be asked to go on a podcast. And, but at the same time, it's like, I'm still just a normal person. I mow my lawn. I have kids and have to take care of them. And, so I think for any person who, it's just really important to have those reminders about just to humble yourself a little bit. And when I was talking about with this other guy is like, looking at people who have been really successful in politics, yet they sort of abandon a lot of um, a lot of the virtues that we'd like to see in an honest person, and it's because they don't have those daily touch points with normal people. And so when you lose that, it can really send you down a path of ignorance, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ignorant people out there.
Well, whether it's a podcaster who has achieved a lot of fame, and so now he or she doesn't ever interact with the brokenness of the world. And I think that's where a lot of wisdom and the common touch, you maintain the common touch.
Yeah, I'm still very small. I would consider myself very small still, but I mean, it makes, and also doing this all the time, it makes mowing my lawn a lot more fun. Being able to do it's like those things become a treat when you can put everything down. And like right now, I'm in North Carolina. I just got down here last night. I wish I could take some time off, but you're always thinking about the algorithm and is it going to screw up if I don't post for
Mm.
a week? What will happen? And but I'm personally, man, what I love about this is that it allows me just the freedom to live the life I want to live, and that's exactly where I am living, like in North Carolina and in a small town. I got LA out of my system. I have no desire to be in that world. That's where I think you see there's a lot of egos out there, man. There's a lot of stupid people in every business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kind of switching gears, how would you describe the times we're living in right now?
I've never seen anything like it. I became conscious, I would say, of politics pretty late. I mean, I was aware of politics. I never really thought about it. It was always left, it's good guys, right, bad guys. 2016, things changed. But since then, I haven't seen anything like this, where we have factions forming. You have factions on the left, you have factions on the right. People that I never thought I would see, like Steven Crowder going at Candace Owens and vice versa, or Candace Owens going at Trump and Ted Cruz versus Tucker Carlson. It's just that's one thing I'm noticing that's strange, but more concerning is discouraging men to like. There's this nihilism, this many claiming to be like red pill or whatever. I think all these terms are stupid. I think because most of
Hmm.
the people don't even know what they really think. But if you're going to discourage people, they're encouraging people to view people through groups. It's becoming the very thing I was concerned about on the left. All men are this, all women are this. We're all victims now. We're all being oppressed. You just switch out the monarch, the patriarchy with this matriarchy. It's like the same bullshit. It's just, and if you tell men, yo, man, you do need to step up in times of conflict because who's gonna do it? If like we get invaded by Russia, it's like you think it's wise to encourage men not to do that? Like, do you care about what happens to your family? It's just so stupid. And that's where I see these egos. But you can sense it when you encounter someone like that in real life. I've encountered three people that fit this like archetype, and it's best to just avoid them because it never goes well because they act really friendly, but there's something off, and it's this instinctual level where if you cross a line and they have to have the perception of control, and it's very important to them that others view them as the boss and in control. And if they feel slighted or disrespected publicly in that line, the moment you tiptoe across that line, they will explode in a way that's like whiplash. And then they calm down, try and make amends, and then they'll do it again. It's just, I've encountered it 3 times in my life, and it's always the same. But so I guess that's just on my mind because that was what encapsulated this nonsense that I couldn't believe these ideas I was hearing. It's truly, it's just as bad as what caused me to be repelled by what I was experiencing in these colleges. So I'm kind of rambling here because I'm trying to describe like what do I see today? Well, that's the first thing that comes to mind because it literally just happened and it's just hypocrisy and there is no moral code. And then when then I made a video just disagreeing with that, like that concept. I made a video about it. And the guy like calls me a backstabber and a snake. And I was like, dude, you told me use any clips I want from it. Just link back to the video. What, because I disagreed with you? Because what I said about it? And then what is he claims, well, you're deceptively editing. I was like, it's condensed down. I don't put any words in your mouth. Like it's very clear like what you think here. You're making like is there any part here that you disagree with what is represented? And so his response to accuse me of deceptively editing, now he's releasing videos where he's literally deceptively editing and chopping things up to literally put things in my mouth in YouTube shorts just to try and like get me back. It's so dumb. And these are guys who are claiming to help men. It's like
Yeah. That's stupid. That's just stupid.
they claim it, but like there's just some hypocrisy, man. And Andrew Wilson's a smart debater, but I can't help it. He talks about like the moral degradation of society and degeneracy in society, and yet they bring on OnlyFans models to tell those OnlyFans models like how bad it is to act out like sex acts on screen for men watching online so that men will give them money. Meanwhile, they're paying a woman to sit in a low cut dress with her boobs hanging out on screen and suck on popsicles, 5 popsicles during the episode to simulate a sex act so that the men watching online will send Brian money. It's like, do you not see any hypocrisy there?
Well, I think the fact that most people wouldn't even notice it because we're a culture that doesn't notice things. And a lot of people are asleep at the wheel when it comes to looking like one layer deeper at some of the nuances. But yeah, they're borrowing, and I don't know exactly, but just by what you're describing, it's like sometimes what's called quote unquote right wing or conservative, they end up borrowing a lot of the same tactics that they criticize the left for. Maybe they just do it in a more discreet way that's not as noticeable.
He would probably wouldn't claim he would probably claim no I wouldn't I'm critical of conservatives because they're essentially they're too similar to feminists. We're this new thing, this red pill thing. That's what he would that's what if you watch the video that's how it started was him making a comment about how conservatives are similar to feminists, and that's where I was like, wait, what do you mean by that? And that led to, well, they want men to step up in times of war. Well, okay, what if we're invaded by Russia? What do we do? And that's where the exchange and
Yeah,
went
I
from.
think perhaps maybe the right left categories are disappearing and maybe conservatives, liberals, and in this new internet age, digital age, I think I was talking with a really good friend of mine yesterday, and he kind of helped me think about this. You have two ways of looking at the world, and usually, people can fall into two separate categories. People who have an emphasis on memory, and then people who have an emphasis on imagination. And I think a wise person can reconcile both of those. They don't betray memory, they don't betray tradition, and and one of the results is that they don't repeat the same mistakes. But a person who is infatuated with imagination, abandoning memory, it's like there's no sense of being rooted. And so you can have people on the right who do those right who are like that, and it has a different flavor, but a lot of the results are the same thing as like you know, because that's usually, you know, liberals, social justice warrior types like are all focused on imagination. They've completely abandoned any memory. And usually, you know, staunch conservatives are too grounded in memory to where they're not in favor of any sort of positive change at all. And so being able to reconcile both of those, but if you completely infatuate yourself and overemphasize imagination, you are sort of in like this no man's land and nothing to sort of tether you to great tradition,
I
morality that
agree.
is not changing. What do you think about all that?
That's why I think like storytelling. So I was trying to get to with Joe Rogan is like how in filmmaking and screenwriting, the best ones still, even if they're complete fiction, they tap into these eternal truths in the fabric of of reality, and that's what archetypes are. That's when it resonates with us. When you tell, there's a proper way to tell a story, and yeah, there's multiple ways to. It's like these puzzles, like Dunkirk. There's so many different ways that you could piece that together with these three different storylines and timelines, and but at the end of the day, that puzzle has to fit, and that's what you're doing as a filmmaker. You're trying to put this puzzle together, but it all still is creating an emotional response within the audience. And that emotional response comes from experiencing something that's true, even if it's fictional. So
Mm-hmm.
you're never free of truth.
Yeah. I mean, sorry that happened. What you were
What?
saying here.
Oh,
Uh,
it's whatever.
yeah.
It's probably why it's called whatever podcast. But it was stupid of me to probably do it. I had seen like Candace Owens on there, Charlie Kirk, Michael Knowles. So I was like, how bad could it be? I didn't really know what I was getting into. It was a 7 hour podcast.
7 hours?
So dumb.
Do you guys
And
take breaks when the podcast goes that long, or?
no, it was so he paid for the flight, but it was essentially me flying out there to work for him for 7 hours, and then he calls me a backstabber. I was like, how? I was a panelist, just like anyone else. Why was I? And I hadn't. So imagine me saying, all right, so tomorrow you're going to be on a podcast until 1 a.m. for 7 hours, but you can't go to sleep tonight. That's what the equivalent was because I had to travel all night to get there. Then podcast starts at 4 until 1 a.m. on the West Coast. So we have a 3 hour time lapse. So it was actually 4 a.m. in my time zone. Then I wake up the next morning and the flight he booked for me wasn't until that night, the next night. And I have no flight information. So I text him like, "Hey, can you email me the flight information?" I don't get any response back. So I just go to the airport, try and figure it out. Sit in the airport all day, and I was able to figure it out. But so yeah, all that travel. So I was like, "Yeah, man, it'll be worth your time though because it's gonna be great exposure." What's the exposure? Hit pieces now online with deceptive editing and claims that I'm a backstabber after all that travel because I made a video disagreeing with him on men's responsibility in times of conflict. So
Yeah.
there's no
I
reasoning
so
with him.
some people who might be listening to this, and thank you for sharing that. I understand it. You know, it
Well, tell the truth. I mean, it's worth shining a light on this nonsense.
yeah.
I think
So
people are too scared because he's got a big audience and everything, and that's why his ego got hit by it so bad. No one ever probably seems to do it. That's why he couldn't just watch the
yeah.
video.
Do you think a lot of the really big podcasters fell for the same trap as legacy media?
What's the trap?
The willing to do anything for views, essentially. You know,
I think a lot of people would do that. I don't think it's
podcasters.
unique to.
I think podcasters sort of started off with like this, we're going to return media to the hands of the people, right? And it started
It,
off that way.
it's
And
money.
then
It's
as
just
they
like it's
grew in
money.
fame and stature, they're falling for the same trap. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it has, but I think that's going to happen with a lot of people in the pursuit of money. Like and that's something I constantly am with sponsors and things. There's videos where I make myself put out videos with no sponsor. I could put a sponsor in every video, but I feel like it doesn't feel right. And I feel like it would do something for the audience. Like I want something to be pure and still be able to put in a few now and then so I can provide for my
Yeah.
family and everything but I could be putting in a lot more. And a lot of people do. But I'm trying not to just, at the end of the day, it's not just chasing money because then you're just chasing
Yeah.
myths.
Yeah. Well, I really hope I get to meet you in person one of these days, just to thank you and shake your hand because just
I wish I could have done more, man. I wish I could have actually made a difference.
you did, man. You really did. I remember when so I had the Give Send Go, and it had sort of slowed down, and I remember thinking, man, why is it picking up all of a sudden, like just randomly? And a few hours later is when somebody sent me the video you made about my story,
Oh,
and
good.
I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And so many people were leaving comments on the Give Send Go saying, Warren Smith sent me. I saw your story on Warren Smith, and I it introduced me to who you were, and I'm glad you were very approachable, and I know I haven't known you for very long, but I just want to thank you for your willingness to engage with me and to
Oh,
speak
it
with me.
it hit close to home, so I just feel bad that you're going through that. I remember what it feels like, and it's just sucks so much. So I wish I just been like, what can I do? It's just So I'll do everything I can, but we've spoken a few times now, so we have kind of gotten to know each other. This is like the third real conversation, like, and then we've messaged a bit. But yeah, one day we'll let me know if you're in Massachusetts ever, and yeah, we'll get
For
together.
sure. That's where
Keep
my
doing
wife
your
is from
podcast if
originally.
that's something you want to do. Sorry, what?
No, I'd love to do another one. My wife is originally from Massachusetts, and so I imagine
Oh,
maybe we'll go for
yeah,
some reason at some point.
perfect.
Yeah.
Let me know when
Well,
you
hey
do.
man, just
You
really
got
want
my
to thank
number.
you.
All right.
Um, have a great rest of your day, and yeah, we'll stay in touch, man. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you, Matthew.
All right,
Have a good
see you,
one.
man.